Functional Assessment-Based Interventions, a guide to operationally defined behaviors. Welcome to the first of several online modules to support individuals and/or teams on critical components of the Tier 3 intervention, Functional Assessment-Based Interventions, or FABI. Outcomes of this video will be to review critical features of composing an operationally defined behavior, which would include target and replacement behaviors, observe with look-fors the development of a target behavior during a teacher interview, and practice composing an operationally defined behavior using the critical features. Let's start with a review on the critical features of operationally defining behaviors. First, the behavior must be observable. As you can see in this picture, the students are sitting on the carpet, facing forward, legs crisscrossed, and hands are in their laps. Secondly, an operationally defined behavior would be measurable, which would be countable for data collection. Looking at this picture, what could you measure? Lastly, behaviors would occur over time. Why would it be important to know how often the child falls down while skating? Were some of your thoughts the following reasons? Behaviors need to be seen over time, and the data to indicate patterns in order to identify the function. When choosing a target behavior, you would want to look at the behaviors that occur early in a chain. For example, a teacher asks a high school student to put their cell phone away. The student does not comply. A series of events follows that leads to more escalated behaviors, such as insubordination and possibly leaving the classroom. The behavior of first concern would be the non-compliance. We have set the foundation of defining behaviors and what behaviors to look at first. The question now is, when do you as a team member create an operationally defined target behavior? This is the problem behavior that is selected for the process. One part of the functional assessment is conducting a teacher interview. The starting point of the interview is to clearly define the target behavior. Let's listen to a teacher interview. Please listen for the establishing of the early on behavior and creating the examples and non-examples of the prioritized problem behavior.
Good morning, Mrs. Fields. How are you today?
I'm great, Mrs. Sunshine. I'm really looking forward to having support with Lily.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to complete this teacher interview. The information you give will be invaluable to this process. As our teacher, you know the student very well, and any information you can provide will be helpful.
Sounds great. I just have to pick up my students at ARD by 10:35.
Of course, that gives us 45 minutes to complete this interview. Let's get started. We are here today to talk about Lily, and I'm going to ask you a series of questions to help determine the target or problem behavior, which will guide the development of the plan we will create. Can you list and describe some of the behaviors of concern for Lily?
Well, in the past couple of weeks, she's begun to talk a lot about ailments. She says when we're working or when she's working by herself that her stomach hurts or that she needs to eat.
Do you know if she's getting breakfast in the morning?
Yeah, I ask her, and she says she eats a full breakfast, and I've talked to her father as well, and he assures me that he's eating breakfast in the morning.
Therefore, we know hunger may not be of concern. What are some other behaviors?
Work completion, eloping, which just started a couple months ago, and her refusals throughout the day.
Are there any other behaviors you can think of?
She does lack social interactions, appropriate ones, with her peers. She at times will play with them inappropriately outside. So, as an example, just a couple days ago, she was blocking kids on the slide, wouldn't let them go down, and just smiling about it.
Of all these behaviors, which ones are most important to address at this time?
Well, I would think the eloping, because I don't know where she goes, and once she leaves the room, it's very difficult to get her to come back and do anything else for the rest of the day.
Yes, I can understand that the eloping can be very scary for a child to leave your sight. As we think about the chain of behavior and what happens before she leaves, what are you seeing?
The refusals.
And what does that look like specifically?
It can be anything from when I'm teaching the group on the carpet. She'll come up to me saying she's hungry or that she doesn't want to do her work, and when I ask her to go back to her seat so that I'll be right there, she refuses, she won't leave, or she'll start whining and telling me that she really needs to eat something. It can also be, if she's working by herself and she's not starting a task and I ask her or give her some next steps, she'll not do it, and sometimes she follows me and starts skipping around the room.
Okay, is there anything specific she says when she's refusing?
She'll tell me no, or that she doesn't want to do it, even like with a whining kind of tone.
If I was watching her when she is non-compliant, what would I see?
During work time or transitioning, she'll put her head down, she pushes her papers away, she'll tell me no, or sometimes she just sits there and doesn't do anything, or other times, like I said, she'll get up, she'll start skipping and turning around and following me.
From what I'm hearing, the target behavior sounds a lot like non-compliance. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Okay, the next part is to make sure that our description of the target behavior is observable, measurable, and repeatable. Here are the behaviors that you are seeing with non-compliance. Saying no, or I don't want to, putting her head down on the table during independent work time, pushing her papers away or skipping around the room during instructional time, and following you around the room without permission.
Yes, that's accurate.
What are some behaviors that you see that wouldn't be non-compliance?
I would think if she picks up her pencil and starts to work.
That is great. What else?
I guess, if I'm teaching on the carpet or if we're doing something and she just wants to stay at her table, as long as she's, looking at me often and engaged with the lesson.
Those will be our non-examples. Before we go on through the rest of the questions, let's make sure we're on the same page with the target behavior. Let's review what we defined here today.
After listening to the teacher interview, what did you notice about the identification of the early on behavior and the creation of the examples and non-examples? In the space provided, please now practice creating your own operationally defined behavior. Remember to include the following: a label, such as non-compliance, the examples, what does that target behavior look like and sound like, and the non-examples, what could be an acceptable variance. Today, we discussed the critical components of an operationally defined behavior. We identified the rationale for starting with the behavior early in the chain. We listened to a teacher interview where they created the target behavior, and you practice composing an operationally defined behavior. Please now take time to consider how ready are you to compose an operationally defined target behavior within the teacher interview. Please circle the number. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.